Welcome everyone back to Green Theory, Season 2. I am Corporal Gravestone, CT3610.
Hello, I'm CT Clamp 1695.
I'm Corporal Blueberry, CT5936.
And I am Staff Sergeant Jester, CT4977.
Today we're going to be mixing up the podcast a little bit, and instead of going through our normal thing where we start off with a question or with a set of questions that we then answer in turn, or talking about a story, today we are actually going to be doing an overview of the multiverse of Star Wars between the Legends content, what used to be known as the Expanded Universe, and the canon content since Disney took over. And I have an image laid out ready to go for all of us to see. So, from the top, we are starting at Knights of the Old Republic, Episode 1, because there are two of them. So,
Goated game, by the way.
So, does somebody want to run through the first KOTOR game since I haven't played it yet?
So, don't mind if I do. This is one of my absolute favorite games. I've beaten it, 20 times. So, the first Knights of the Old Republic game was created by LucasArts. It was a little RPG game. Felt a lot like D&D. A lot to do with dice rolls and the way you built your character. Literally, it was Star Wars D&D, right? The way that the story worked is you woke up as a soldier on a Republic cruiser, and this is way before all of the Star Wars that we know and love. This is in fact, there is a Sith Empire, so this is even before the rule of two, right? So there's tons of Sith out there, and the Sith and the Jedi are at war. We get to see the Mandalorian war through this. So you wake up as a Republic soldier on this by the Sith. You end up escape. You land on this backwater planet. Have this fun little quest line, and eventually you end up finding out that you can use the Force. Yada yada yada. Spoiler alerts for the games. Guess this should go without saying for the entire podcast. There will be heavy spoils for a lot of the media, almost all of the media that you see in that picture. So just get that out. But you end up learning that you can use a Force. Turns out you were a Sith Lord, that the Jedi brainwashed you, erased your memories, so that you didn't take over what's called the Skyforge. Does anyone else remember the name of that?
It's Starforge. You had it right.
Starforge.
Perfect. The Starforge, which is this big space station that pumped out spaceships, kind of not really relevant to the plot. Feels more like a MacGuffin than anything else, but that's there. You find out you're the Sith Lord, and you end up being able to make a choice between whether you want to go down the good path of a Jedi or down the bad path as a Sith. Throughout the game, you make a lot of choices of whether you want to be a good person or a bad person, Jedi or Sith, which in reality boils down to, do I want to be a nice, genuinely good person, or do I want to be the biggest piece of shit to ever exist? Great dichotomy, right? And it's just your typical good guy, bad guy ending. Good guy, you end up stopping the big Sith Lord you've been fighting along the way. You turn against your old ways. You get the girl, Bad guy ending, you kill your former your former friend. End up betraying everyone you know and love. And bad guy, Erg. Which I think is actually the canon ending, to be completely honest, but
Yes. So the canon,
I don't know.
The canon path is going to be the first one we follow, and
Okay.
based off of the image we have here, which is the most accurate that I have found so far, we are following the dark side line of Knights of the Old Republic, with the Starforge being fully intact at the end of the game. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And from that, so then we move on to Knights of the Old Republic 2. And now that we've explained Knights of the Old Republic, we are going to go down the dark side path, which is the right-hand side of this image. But we will come back and do the light side later. So next up is Knights of the Old Republic 2. I also have not played this one, because it doesn't make sense to play this one without playing the first. So, Clamp, do you have this one also? Or Jester?
So, I love the first game. I've never played the second game.
Jester or Blueberry, do you guys have anything?
I have never, unfortunately, touched a KOTOR game.
Yeah, me either.
Okay, it's all right. I could still do this.
Their PC. I'm not mistaken their PC. I'm a bumpkin and a poor country bumpkin. I can't do PC.
It's okay. I still got this. All right.
I can do a little bit. I can do like a Too Long Dead and Read of KOTOR 2 at least. So the long and short of it...
Gravestone, do it.
The long and short of it is, you have to ultimately go down and do essentially the exact same thing, and ultimately you decide whether or not to destroy or leave Malachor 5 intact, which then would lead to the creation of Darth Nihilus and a whole massive chaotic thing.
Yeah, perfect.
And weirdly enough, the dark side ending of this game is also the way canon goes, which is both hilarious and unfortunate for us, because that means that our canon content is actually very much so set in the dark side.
Which, let's be real, is kind of cool, you know? Like,
yeah,
our first... Because, I mean, let's be real, one of the coolest things about Star Wars is we lose a lot.
Yeah.
Like, the heroes don't win.
Yeah. That is true. So, since we're...
I have a question quick.
What's up?
If KOTOR 2 ends on the dark, it's supposed to end on the dark side ending. Isn't that when the mass shadow generator is activated?
No, actually, the mass shadow generator is activated on the light side because that's what destroys Malachor 5. And because Rebels, as we see later, has Malachor 5 intact, as that's where Maul has been abandoned for years, unfortunately that means that we're on the dark side.
Does that mean we get Darth Nihilus?
No. Darth Nihilus is only created by the destruction of Malachor 5 through the wound of the Force caused by the mass shadow killing everyone on the planet.
So wait.
Oh, okay. I missed what happened then.
Does that mean that we can tell all those edgy, like, Sith Lord fans who think that the Sith are good guys? I mean, we could tell them that one of their favorite Sith Lords isn't even a canon thing, like, at all.
Yeah.
It never was.
Yeah, it's amazing.
To be fair, most of them aren't.
Yeah, there's a lot that aren't. In every single timeline, we still have Darth Bane and the Rule of Two, but there are only half of these timelines have Darth Nihilus.
And that is interesting. Do we want to talk about that real quick? That's kind of a big rule and a big, like, lore thing. If we're talking about, like, Legends and Canon's events, what is the Rule of Two, and why do we have it?
Okay, so, actually, coming up next on the canon path, since we have followed the dark side rule, we run into a special storyline that I don't quite remember what it is, but it's something about the Sith and the Sith Empire before the Phantom Menace, and quite a bit of this is based off of Darth Malgus, Darth Bane, all of these Sith people throughout the years, Darth Plagueis included. And Darth Bane was one of the old Sith Lords, one of the last Sith Lords of the Great Sith Empire that we talked about for KOTOR. And what he did was, after all of the Jedi, and after they finally wiped out the Sith Empire, Darth Bane instituted this thing called the Rule of Two, in which there are only two Sith, because the Sith actually killed all of themselves out. The Jedi didn't do most of the killing. because the Sith are so ingrained in their passion and their lust for power, they end up killing themselves out, and that leads to all of these issues that causes the rule of two to have to be instituted. And then
Yeah, because that talks about I think we talked about it a bit last episode with the dark side.
I think so. We might
That
have.
to be strong in the dark side, you kind of have to be evil.
Yeah,
You know,
pretty much.
you have to commit evil acts to get stronger. And the dark side power. So if you have a whole empire of people who have to do evil acts to get stronger, that doesn't bode well for an empire, you know?
Yeah. So from there we have the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. As normal, nothing crazy happens. It's all the same thing across three of the four paths that you can take. We have Star Wars The Clone Wars along the way, the 2008 show. And then at Revenge of the Sith, this is where we get our first branch off of the canon timeline directly. That I don't remember this one in the slightest. I'm pretty sure this is Anakin chooses to stay with the Jedi, though. And that's the second from the right. The gray one. But from
Oh, I
Revenge...
thought it was going to be when he killed Kenobi.
So that is one of the branches we could talk about. What do you think of that one, Blueberry?
Um,
Like, what do you know of it?
I
I'm not,
I don't
if
think
I'm
he should have been
mistaken,
able to kill Palpatine, even if he caught him off guard.
yeah, that's one of the PlayStation 2 games, I think it was. Oh, I cannot remember. It's the Revenge of the Sith game. It was an alternate.
Yeah, the tie-in.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember. I'm starting to remember it now. I never
But
played
wait.
it. I've heard of it.
Are you telling me that Anakin's sick, like, flipping of the lightsaber, like, distraction wouldn't work?
No, it would not.
Come on, though.
Probably
Like,
not.
that was so sick. You know that was really dope.
Yeah.
What is that gonna do though?
It's
Oh,
gonna
look,
look
shiny.
cool.
Oh, look, shiny thing in the
It's
air.
gonna look cool.
No, we're talking about, like, are we forgetting who we're talking about here for a second? We're talking about Anakin, the king of, like, his like attitude and his whole like drama crap is what makes him so strong. You see, we think he does this because he's just some little like meh boy. No, he does this because that's his secret weapon. You see?
Yeah.
He makes his cape fly when he's in space because it intimidates. So when Palpatine saw him flip his lightsaber, he's like, yo, this dude's legit, you know? Like, yeah, he's cool.
He's gonna do great things for me. Ah,
Yeah, plus it's Hayden Christensen, you know? Being that close to Hayden Christensen, I'd be a little starstruck too.
that's true.
Like,
Yeah. Whatever. Well, with that timeline, whether it's Darth Vader kills Kenobi or Anakin kills Palpatine, what have you, it branches off and that's no longer canon. From there, on the canon track, we have Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, Solo: A Star Wars Story, and I'm assuming that most people by now know these two or three sets. For those that don't, Jedi Survivor, Jedi Fallen Order is the story of Cal Kestis, a survivor of the Purge, who goes through and he fights a bunch of the Imperials and goes through and everything and becomes more and more powerful and becomes a kind of crazy cool guy. That's about all you need to know. And Solo is the story of Han Solo during lawless time of the Empire before they truly take over everything. Then we have Star Wars Rebels, and everything except for the epilogue scene, which takes place after Return of the Jedi. This we have another split that is also canon, weirdly enough, and So that's where we see this purple line separate from the red line. And what happens here is this purple line should actually include The Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett. Those should not be on the red line. But what this path is the path where Ahsoka lives. This purple path is Ahsoka living and assisting and going through with the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, Grogu. And the survival of Grogu with the Mandalorian means that the Imperials and the First Order never get a hold of his DNA and are never able to replicate Palpatine with M count. So there is no Palpatine returns down this purple route.
Wait, you're telling me that they fixed it?
Yes.
You're telling me Disney has finally retconned their biggest mistake?
Yes. And no.
1 second, guys. I have to go to a church real quick and start, thanking some people,
So it's Ahsoka's fault that Palpatine returned?
No,
No,
it is because Ahsoka survived in Star Wars Rebels. That leads to the Mandalorian, because Ahsoka appears in the Mandalorian and assists Din Djarin with getting Grogu, and ultimately all of these things change everything, so that Grogu stays away and is safe from the Final Order and the First Order and the Sith and everything. However,
So
because
that means okay.
because we also see that Ahsoka dies in Rebels,
Mm-hmm.
that leads down the path of
The dark timeline.
yeah. I mean, Rogue One is part of both timelines, so let's go, and that's next. So Rogue One is the rise of the Death Star, the death of these pretty cool characters overall, and it's just generally a lose-lose situation for the Rebels, except that they get the Death Star plans out of it. That's about
A cool thing about that is I want to touch on that because especially if we're talking about different kinds of canons. As far as I know, we have 3 or 4 different tellings of how we got the Death Star plans.
Yes, but
We
those
have
appear. So this is the canon path, and then we'll talk about other paths with Operation Skyhook and the Force Unleashed and everything like that, and the other things down other paths. But yeah,
That is down another path. Is the original Battlefront games?
should be somewhere. I don't remember, but yeah, somewhere in here, I believe the original Battlefront games are.
Because I know the newer ones are.
Yeah, the new one, the new Battlefront 2 is after Return of the Jedi, because that's where the storyline is. But after Rogue One, then we have A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, and then Star Wars Infinities really throws it off. So the Star Wars Infinity of A New Hope, I believe, is the Death Star destroys Yavin 4 with all of the rebels on it. They kill off all the rebels, and that's one of the paths down this way. The Empire Strikes Back, Darth Vader kills Luke. And then there's another one where Darth Vader and the Empire are defeated on Hoth. It's a really weird set of things. And then Return of the Jedi, the Luke Skywalker joins the dark side. Luke Skywalker is killed by Darth Vader on the second Death Star. The rebels aren't captured on the Forest Moon of Endor. Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine, doesn't plan a trap at Endor. There's a whole lot of different things that ultimately there's no real way to describe the endings because all of the Infinities just change how this goes.
Han Solo and Chewbacca get attacked by zombies.
Actually, there is a little bit of something that's supposed to make sense of Infinities, and it ties to the conflict between the EU and canon, as far as people saying about how ridiculous the EU was and it needed to be retconned. a lot of what people think is the retconnable things that needed to get cut off
Sorry.
that made EU ridiculous. No, you're fine. That was actually what went into Star Wars Infinities, which is a bunch of abstract and what if scenarios. That's why we have things like Death Star destroying Yavin, the Empire straight up losing everything at Hoth, etc., etc. Infinities is the what if abstract go hog wild sandbox timeline.
I was actually thinking about that when prepping for the podcast for this episode. Because I was expecting like all of us to be like, yeah, Legends is great, awesome. So I was like, so I tried to prep the other side a little bit, and think like, Legends was really crazy. Like, you know what I mean? There really is a. Sorry, I'm hopping on train right now. There's really no way to track like what all happened anymore. It got like a little out of hand with how crazy the storylines are. Probably for the best that they became like retconned,
Yeah, but that was Infinities. Infinities was never supposed to be actually held in any authority. It was just kind of something that authors could do for giggles.
Yeah, but there's so many different timelines and endings to this that Star Wars Infinities is a very hard thing to describe and ultimately give a definitive ending to. So this is the Star Wars Infinities timeline ending, and there's not really any specific way it ends. From Return of the Jedi, we end up with Battlefront 2, and that still splits off into. From this, we have the Force Awakens and the Sith ending to this final order and everything, and we have the Mandalorian ending, which is the much better side that ends up because Ahsoka still lives. Since we already talked about Ahsoka Lives timeline, now we are going down the Ahsoka Dies timeline. The Mandalorian and Boba Fett don't happen the same way. Moff Gideon gets the child. Luke Skywalker doesn't ultimately take him, and all of these things still happen and end up with Grogu getting captured and turned into Darth Sidious's clones, essentially. Then we have the Star Wars Resistance series, which I hate so much. It is so weird in every possible way. And then we have the worst trilogy, the sequel trilogy.
Ugh, I don't like that.
For anybody that doesn't know the sequel trilogy, it kind of sucks.
Oh,
I mean, disclaimer, I'm going to do this so we don't get absolutely ratioed. If you find enjoyment in the sequel trilogy movies, I mean, good for you. You're enjoying Star Wars, but it's just, I can see where they were trying to go with, but it could have been a whole lot better in execution as far as writing and everything. And if you look closer into it, there's a lot of problems with the writing as far as rewrites and reshoots and stuff like that. It was very ambitious. I could see where they were trying to go, and if you find enjoyment with it, good for you. Me personally, I can't overlook some of the glaring abnormalities.
Yeah. It's weird, and I don't like it. There's so many plot holes. And the fact that they wrote an entire book and a bunch of this stuff just so that they could retcon a couple of those plot holes kind of seems like lazy writing ultimately to me.
we can just pretend that that's non-canon.
Yeah, so we as the 41st Green Theory podcast, we say that the Ahsoka Lives is the proper and true canon timeline.
Yeah.
Here.
I can second that, I guess.
Alright, and now that we've talked about the two properly canon timelines and Infinities and the Revenge of the Sith off branch, now we're going to KOTOR 1's dark side ending, but KOTOR 2 light side ending, in which we have the destruction of Malachor 5 using the mass shadow generators, and the creation of Darth Nihilus, and all of that. Which leads to the only timeline that does not have anything written about it other than Darth Nihilus. But it completely disrupts everything so that we don't have the Rule of Two, the Phantom Menace, and the original trilogy. We don't have any of that. This is the only timeline that we don't end up having the prequel trilogy, the original trilogy, or the sequel trilogy.
So you could say this is where the fun begins.
Yes. But again, no clue. There is nothing. There is, except for Darth Nihilus, there is nothing about this timeline at all. So, who knows? If somebody has something that they want to say about this specific timeline, or there is some big super crazy event that can be talked about besides Darth Nihilus, please by all means speak up or leave a comment. Let us know somehow.
I mean, I honestly think that that's a really cool concept, you know? The idea that the Rule of Two was never implemented. Would the Sith Empire be able to stand, or would it fizzle itself out?
I mean...
Or is this one of those things where, like, would the Rule of Two eventually implement itself somehow?
I mean, hilariously, the Rule of Two is still implemented pretty sure it's still implemented on this timeline. I just don't know where or when, because we do have, on the light side ending of KOTOR, the light side ending of KOTOR 2, in which the Rule of Two
You kind of cut off there.
Yeah, so we have KOTOR 1's light side ending and KOTOR 2's light side ending, which ultimately the Rule of Two is implemented still, and we have the Phantom Menace and the prequel trilogy. And this is my favorite way to go, personally, because ultimately it ends with Outcast. And Apocalypse.
Okay, see, the question I had earlier about Malachor kind of stems off this timeline, which is why the orange line was confusing me for the longest time, and I'm happy we finally got to it. Because a lot of lore channels and such that I have seen, like even Geetsley's and like meta nerds, they even say about Malachor actually being Malachor's destruction and leading to Nihilus and that whole path of the game, and then somehow they tie it into like the series going as it supposedly is supposed to anyway. It's just very weird.
Yeah, there is that, but that is down the light side ending of KOTOR 1, which is the destruction of the Star Forge, as well as the destruction of Malachor 5. And that is the path where we have both Nihilus and the prequel trilogy and so forth.
I got you now. It's okay.
Yeah,
I gotcha.
But this timeline is one of the weirdest we have and the most unwritten. This is the one that nobody talks about, nobody even thinks about. Because there's nothing about it.
I mean, could we also maybe talk about why?
Well, the simple answer is the Starforge still exists, but Malachor 5 doesn't. The one big homeworld of the Sith is destroyed, but you still have that super powerful device that creates that creates capital ships. Oh, by the way, for anybody that is curious about the Rise of Skywalker, how the Final Order got so many ships, that's the Starforge. The Starforge is what created all the Star Destroyers.
Oh, where did that even come from? That was that hadn't been supplemental material.
Wait a minute. No, this is my problem. And I said this during the last episode, right? During episode 1 of the season. My biggest issue with the Rise of Skywalker is that they had good content there. They had it. They just didn't explain it. Palpatine living, that's good content. That's from Legends. That's what happened. But they just say somehow he lived.
Yeah.
And then they left it at that. And then this right here, another prime example. I had no idea about this, but that makes that seem so much cooler than what it is. Like, where the hell did he get a fleet? Oh my god, it's the Star Forge.
Yeah.
That's like the coolest thing to me.
And
They didn't explain it.
That's one of the things that when you start thinking about the multiverse and where it all stems from, that's why we have it organized, why this has it organized the way it is because the Starforge survived. That means that ultimately somebody somewhere has to find it and use it. And it makes sense that because there's a massive fleet of ships that appears from who knows where, could it possibly be that Palpatine found the Starforge? That's the only possible explanation.
Go with my. Oh, sorry, I talked over you. I apologize.
That's fine. It happens all the time.
But that's where I was coming with as far as my little disclaimer I said about the sequel trilogy. Like I said, they had nuggets of gold that they had to work with, but they didn't string it together, and you have to use all the supplemental books and reading and this, that, and everything to piece it together. And it's just like, that's just like choppy writing, very bad. When I watched Rise of Skywalker the very first week that it came out in my local movie theater, I watched it and everyone was crying, where did all these ships come from? Why are they rising out of the dirt? I'm just like, wait, he was supposed to be secret, but he had all these fleets? Now, as you said, Starforge survived. I'm just like, well, I guess that would make sense, but it would have been nice if that would have been conveyed and explained. Like, why do we have to go into supplemental material for such an important detail of the story?
Yeah.
Like, even just have it show up in like the background obscured by the thick storm clouds and everything. Like a flash of lightning comes, lights up the clouds, and you see the hazy silhouette of the Starforge. Then we've been like, that son of a gun.
Well, I do want to make something clear though with it is this isn't new to Star Wars. The whole thing of like this is a big gripe that the prequels had, that people had against the prequels, is they thought that the plot was shallow. They thought that Anakin's character was too whiny. All these things which can be easily explained away by digging deeper into the lore.
Yeah. And then things that were thrown off by the Clone Wars 2008, like how Dooku says Dooku and Anakin's banter during the fight on the Invisible Hand in Episode 3. My powers have doubled since the last time you met, Count. Well, that was last week, according to the 2008 Clone Wars. So there's a little bit of disconnect there once that show was created.
But it's still like the whole like thing of Star Wars having these big plot points that just aren't explained in the movies. That's always been a thing. The whole thing about Emperor Palpatine, talk about Darth Plagueis, how that was his master. You know, like Palpatine was.
Nobody really understood that until you actually think about it or read. Like, the novelization kind of explains it a little bit better, if I remember correctly.
Exactly, and I think that the prequel trilogy the sequel trilogy, and again, I don't like the sequel trilogy, but I also want to be fair, and I want to give the sequel trilogy its props and its fairness. This is the same problem, the same gripes that people have had about Star Wars since the very beginning of Star Wars. It's just, Star Wars has been known for having massive plot points explained outside the film.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the charms. That's one of the reasons why we can have podcasts like this, because there's so much to unpack about these events. You know?
Anybody else have opinions on the fact that they never mentioned the Starforge, but yet it's very obviously there?
Or just thoughts in general? Blueberry,
No,
you've been
not
awfully
really.
quiet.
I don't know a lot about the Knights of the Old Republic stuff. So
Well, I mean, like even about like just thoughts in general about what we've been talking, or anything about what we talked about.
I think they should be explaining more stuff in general in the movies. Because the average person watching it isn't just gonna know that stuff.
And even the people that do know it aren't going to recognize it until they actually think about it for a little while.
So I just think that's a problem with all the movies.
But is that necessarily a bad thing?
No.
Yeah, that's true.
Not really. It gives you wiggle room to write with, but you should still at least be able to allude to it. That way, people can build on it and be like, "Well, what's that? We need to look into it." It's where it's the thing with Star Wars. The movies are great, absolute lovely space opera movies. But something that we've seen a lot with when it comes to these complex stories, especially with a lot of the shows coming out, the shows seem to be able to go into deeper detail and be able to go through it because they can spread it out over seasons instead of trying to jam it in 1 hour and a half spectacular extravaganza, maybe up to 2 hours. I think right, Rise of Skywalker was 2 hours of movie, and
Yeah. And
but even then, like maybe a few,
like 4 episodes only, and
right?
like on average, these seasons are between 8 and 20 episodes apiece.
Right. But we could still at least allude to it. Like I said, though, with like when the Sith fleet was rising over Exegol, like have a crack of lightning light up some storm clouds and you just see the silhouette of the Star Forge. And then everyone's like, well, what's that? And people who know, they're like, oh my God, that son of a gun, it's the Star Forge. And then you get people looking into it. It's like,
yeah.
I think that's one of the cool things though about Star Wars is, and this might be a bit of a cop out, but I think sometimes the writers don't know what they're writing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That might honestly be the case.
Like, look at Bogo, the lizard that Obi-Wan wrote in Episode 3.
Oh, Boga, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Boga. Do you think that whenever the writer was writing Boga, that they were gonna like have this whole like backstory of these are warrior mounts used by the indigenous population, and they use all these different like attributes to navigate, and like all this like background lore? Do you think they knew that when the writer, not the artist, but the writer was just writing the script? No, he probably just wrote and have Obi-Wan write a badass mount.
Okay, The Rise of Skywalker was 2.5 hours long.
Oh wow, we're almost touching like Lord of the Rings level.
Yeah.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
No, we're not.
I mean,
we're
in
touching
light-
Lord of the Rings.
I'm saying like the theatrical. They were like a 3 hour long movie.
Yeah, we're raising the theatrical cut.
yeah. I mean,
we did.
The extended editions are amazing. It's like what, 4 or 5 hours a piece. And then, did you hear about the Peter Jackson uncut version that's like 14 hours per movie?
I would love that edition so much. I've heard of it. I've heard rumors. I've heard it might exist. I've never heard anything confirmed.
I haven't either, but it would be so cool if it was.
I've never heard about that, but I'd watch it in one sitting.
Speaking of cut stuff and things, while we're on this topic, even though we kind of derailed a little bit and started talking about Lord of the Rings, there's actually quite a bit that we could actually piece back into like the original trilogy, and to piece things in. Like I know there was a scene. There was a cut scene where Palpatine orders an officer by the name of Jerjerrod or Jar Jar or something like that,
Who
to
becomes
fire on
he becomes Grand
the
Moff.
what?
He becomes Grand Moff later down one of our other timelines.
Right. Well, this Jar Jar guy, he was given an order to fire on the forest moon of Endor, the Death Star, and destroy it if the shields went down as like a contingency, take out the rebel group that's down there. And in this scene, you can see Jar Jar like hesitating, like you can see humanity within the Empire. Like when we think Empire, we think arrogant and snooty British posh accented officers and faceless stormtroopers. But stuff like that would make you like think like these are actual people, not just baddies.
Mm-hmm.
A scene like that, and there's also a bunch of other things that have been cut out throughout all the movies between all the editions. We could probably almost get to like a Lord of the Rings level on the Star Wars movies alone.
Yeah. There's a lot of cut scenes that would have explained quite a bit of things. Or say the original storyline of the Rise of Skywalker that happened before we got what we do now, where Kylo Ren
That's
was
what I mean.
big bad, or the Last Jedi not killing off Snoke and ending with him being the big bad. Like all of those things we could theoretically be turned into further endings of Star Wars, but because we never saw them or never got anything about them, never learned anything other than the basic ideas that would have happened, there's nothing for us to put in and say that, hey, this could have happened, this would be a timeline.
Well, there is actually one thing that we did get canon with the whole like Vader choosing what side, like whether he went down the good path or bad path. And I wanted to bring it up, but we kind of ran past it. We have in the Vader comics, which are considered canon, Vader. What it would have been like if Vader, Anakin decided to like choose the Jedi instead of Palpatine. And it's heartbreaking.
Is that like when he went to like bleed his kyber crystal?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Do you remember that scene?
Yeah.
Would you like to explain what happened?
I'll try. So Palpatine told Vader to get his own kyber crystal by using one of those stormtrooper like staffs, the electric ones, to kill a Jedi himself. Just with that, he took the kyber crystal, and Palpatine made him go to Mustafar to bleed it, probably to bring out all of his rage, I believe. And he saw this entire I would say a foresight, but it didn't really happen. But
An alternate timeline.
yeah, where he went to kill Palpatine himself, I believe, with that Jedi's lightsaber, and he kind of redeemed himself.
He found like Obi-Wan, him and Padme was alive, and they were able to raise the kid. It was really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple of different timelines like that one, actually. If I remember correctly, there was a comic where Luke Skywalker gets sent to the past and helps Darth Vader fight and kill Palpatine.
But wait, isn't that what happened already?
No, like is that...
Yes, but no, I think he means like went back to the to the scene in Revenge of the Sith with
one.
Windu and all.
Yeah, he goes back.
Oh,
he goes
okay.
back and assists Anakin Skywalker kill Palpatine on Coruscant.
And see, this is that's another thing that like about Legends. I guess we should talk. That I wanted to like bring up is that I kind of did, but how convoluted the plot is.
Which is why we have a multiverse.
Mm.
Yeah, but ultimately that specific timeline would have ended in a paradox where it created a loop because by killing Palpatine, you would have split it into two timelines that we would have followed. One where because there was no Luke Skywalker, it went back to the way it was originally, and one where they did do it and then it came back and it never happened. But it's one of those weird things. Alright, are we done with the dark side of KOTOR 1, or does anybody have anything else to go on to this side?
I think we're done.
Alright, so the light side of KOTOR 1, the ending where you destroy the Starforge and never have to deal with it again. Then we go into KOTOR 2, and then we're going to start with the dark side ending of KOTOR 2. So this path is the destruction of the Starforge, but Malachor 5 survives. And that leads us to The Force Unleashed after the prequel trilogy. So I have not played these games either, but I know a little bit about them. But has anybody here played them?
Yeah, I haven't played the DLC though.
I haven't played the DLC. I've played the PlayStation 2 version of Force Unleashed and the PlayStation 3 version of Force Unleashed 2.
Okay. Clamp, have you played the DLC?
I haven't played it, but I have seen like 30 videos on the DLC. I know everything about them.
Okay, good. All right, so who wants to talk? We're gonna have Blueberry. Did you say you played Force Unleashed 1?
Yeah.
All right, so Blueberry, explain Force Unleashed 1 to us then.
So it starts out. Vader and the Empire are attacking Kashyyyk, looking for this Jedi who survived. And there's this fight with the Jedi, but he had a kid who Vader finds out is very powerful in the Force. So he takes him in. He kills all the stormtroopers who were there, so there's no way of Palpatine finding out about this guy, right? His name's Galen Merrick, but they called him Starkiller.
Ironically, Starkiller is the project name of the Death Star. Or, no.
There was Starkiller based in the sequels.
Yeah.
That's what you're thinking about?
Because it was Project Stardust, not Starkiller. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, fun fact, Starkiller, the code name for the game, it was actually originally in Star Wars lore going to be Luke Skywalker's last name before the name Skywalker became an idea.
So Starkiller ends up falling in love with this girl. I forget her name.
Juno Eclipse.
Juno.
Yeah. And he starts turning to the light side and begins fighting against the Empire. He meets this Jedi that Vader ordered him to kill before. He ended up only blinding him.
One of the single most badass Jedi, by the way.
What was his name?
General Ram Kota.
Amen.
So they end up attacking it.
Real quick, can we talk about General Ram Kota?
Hold on. Let Blueberry finish first. We could talk about Kota's intermission.
They attack a Imperial base with Palpatine and Vader on it.
It's the Death Star.
Was it the Death Star?
Yes, it was the original Death Star while it was still under construction.
I thought it just hadn't been built yet.
No. This Death Star, the stage that it was in, it was still undergoing fire tests for the super laser.
Okay. So, Starkiller gets into this fight with Vader, and I would say he won, but Vader kind of held back a lot. And there's this light side or dark side option. You fight Vader, kill him, get your revenge, which is the dark side option, or you allow your friends to escape and fight Palpatine to hold him off. And if you fight Palpatine, you obviously die. And, well, you don't die, but you basically end up in a similar... Oh yeah, you do die against Palpatine, yeah, sorry. But if you fight Vader, and you get the dark side ending, you end up in a similar situation to Vader, where you're in this mechanical suit. Only reason you can survive, just carrying out orders for Palpatine until you find someone better. And that leads to the DLC of the first game.
Alright, so then, Clamp, I believe you said you understood the DLC.
So the thing, honestly, the DLC should be explained at the end because the DLC kind of wraps itself up together. You know, they both kind of go down the same timeline.
Okay, then Jester...
Does that make sense?
Yeah, then Jester explained Force Unleashed 2 for us.
Okay, so Force Unleashed 2, it picks up, I do believe it's a couple years after the original Force Unleashed series. It follows on Camino the storyline of Starkiller, a clone, or rumored clone, at least that's what Vader tells him, about trying to recreate the strength of Starkiller but this time more controllable from the start to the end, not some kid that already had a few years to assert control to take on the Emperor. Well, using the memories of the original Starkiller, he starts remembering things throughout the whole story and about how Vader lied to him and this, that, and everything, and he stages a prison break. And he escapes Camino, steals Darth Vader's TIE Advanced, and he goes to Cato Nemoidia, because that's where he was supposed to go to execute Ram Koda finally. So he goes to Cato Nemoidia, impersonates Vader's assassin, doesn't go very well, and he has to fight through the entire hanging city of Cato Nemoidia to this gladiatorial arena where the planetary baron, I don't remember his proper name, but neither here nor there, has Coda inside the gladiatorial arena for 3 days. I do believe it was 3 days straight, no rests, just throwing executioners and monsters at him. Starkiller goes in to break him out. They through a colossal battle against some weird, misshapen, like almost Quasimodo looking monster called a Gorog. We get to a part where the Rogue Shadow appears, swoops them off, and they fly away, and the Gorog is left crashing to the ground. Very, very intense sequence for young me when I was first playing the game. It was awesome. After this sequence, this clone is having a bit of an identity crisis because he doesn't know what's real, what isn't, on account of his flash grown memories that was supposed to help him learn his skills without all the build up time that he had to do with the original Star Killer. So he decides he wants to go find himself, meditate on it, try to piece his fractured memories together. Coda doesn't like it, but he lets him go anyway. He goes to Dagobah, meets Yoda, and the dark side tree. He goes in to this tree to try to understand things. I didn't really piece a whole lot together because, let's face it, the dark side tree on Dagobah, that thing will mess with your head, and you're in the audience. You're supposed. Anyway, he sees a vision. Juno's in danger. She appears to be on the command bridge of a ship, and a firefight breaks out. So he starts panicking because that's the one thing that he can strongly remember from his previous life. So he goes pell-mell to try to find Juno. He re-links up with Coda, and Coda takes him to the hidden rebel fleet. While they're there and they're heading to go meet Juno, unfortunately, the Empire attacks the fleet. They manage to find them through the use of Boba Fett. Vader did not like at all that his test subject managed to escape and sent Boba to hunt down and bait the clone back to Kamino. So while Galen and Coda run through the ship, trying to keep it going in this attack by these horrifying cyborg monstrosities, we're talking like some really messed up stuff here. Juno actually gets captured. Starkiller was just so close to saving her and stopping this. So the bait is set and everything. Starkiller is absolutely going after Juno. There is no stopping him. Well, considering the fact that he's pulling him back to Vader's pulling Starkiller back to Kamino, Coda's like, well, this is the only shot we're gonna get at doing this, so we might as well go full bore. Assembles the remnants of his fleet, and they go to attack Kamino. Obviously, it's a trap. Vader was expecting them, of course. Planetary shield over, massive chaotic battle. They're trying to make a break for the planet. Planetary shield stopping them. So in another amazing action sequence, Starkiller actually gets the entire command ship to evacuate, uses it as a battering ram to break through the planetary shield. Flies down in this smoking wreckage, jumps out last second, and begins tearing through, I do believe the city's name is Tapoka?
Tapoka City.
Yes, Tapoka City. Trying to find Juno, trying to find Vader.
You're a clone trooper. You don't know your own capital city?
Look, there's many different cities, and it's been a while since I've played Force Unleashed 2. If you haven't noticed,
Blade, what do you? We're from Kamino. We're clone troopers. What are you talking about?
Bam, we're talking. Oh, don't you be a smart aleck with me, boy. Anyway, before we get derailed here, so throughout the entire chaos of Starkiller trying to find Juno, he does help Coda a few times before ultimately leaving the rebels to their fate. Things aren't going very well because he does not care. He wants to save Juno. So he goes to the tower where Vader is, and Vader's playing mind games, trying to get him to give up, to break his spirit. Well, he pushes through, he gets to them. Vader gives him an ultimatum, or else he'll kill Juno. You will serve. If you fail, she dies. You resist, she dies. Classic bad guy. Do what I say, or everything you love goes away. He submits. He's gonna go through with it till Juno attacks Vader. Vader just throws her out a window, and Starkiller goes absolutely bananas. Big fight. Starkiller whoops Vader again, and Coda catches up in time with what's remaining of his forces. And just like in Force Unleashed 1, you have a light side and a dark side option. Dark side option, Starkiller would go to attack Vader, but secretly another dark side clone would attack the clone that we've been playing. And Vader would say, haha, I lied to you about everything. This was basically a test for this clone. This is my perfect clone. Ha 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 ha, everything. Coda and the rebels get slaughtered by this guy. Vader sends him to destroy the rest of the rebels. Dark side ending over. Light side ending. Starkiller stands down, lets Coda arrest Vader. Thankfully, despite being somehow thrown, I don't know how many stories out a window, Juno manages to recover and she's alive. Yay, heartwarming reunion. And then it jumps off after this heartwarming tender moment, and basically it cuts to this really dark scene. They're in like a modified prison cell on board the Rogue Shadow. The clone comes up, says, "You tell me I'm a clone, but that none of that matters because I beat you." Basically goes off on Vader about his mind games and everything and this, that, and everything. And the fleet scatters from Camino after their victory, so that way no one can know which ship has Vader. And the game ends on a cliffhanger with Boba Fett following after the Rogue Shadow. And there was supposed to be a Star Wars Force Unleashed 3. It never came to be when the Disney acquisition came. So unfortunately, that's kind of the end, aside from the DLC for both of the games that goes into the split timeline for each game.
So first, I need to ask, is the theme of this story that I'm hearing that if you can't overcome your challenges, throw your chick out the window. She'll be fine. Yes. Don't worry. But you'll get a power boost to defeat your enemy.
Exactly.
I mean, I guess it kind of plays into the whole theme of Star Wars about love conquers all kind of deal.
So, from what I'm hearing, if we look at the image again, the dark side ending of Force Unleashed 2 follows straight down past New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi.
Oh, no.
And then...
No, it does not.
No, that's the light side ending.
Yeah, the DLCs
you saw.
So the dark side
DLC
ending
goes down the dark side ending.
So wait.
The DLC is the one next to the dark side ending, right?
The DLC continues the dark side line.
Mm-hmm. So in the DLC, it's mostly just, and this is in both games, it's just fight your favorite characters from Star Wars. And the first game, the DLC is you fight Boba Fett, and you fight Boba Fett, Old Ben Kenobi, and Luke. Right? When you fight Boba Fett, you use a force to launch his own missile. When you fight Old Ben Kenobi, you throw his Force Ghost into the Millennium Falcon's engine. And when you fight Luke, you just kick his ass multiple times and turn him back.
So
yeah.
And then the second DLC, you end up fighting Han Solo and Chewie on Endor, and Leia. I forgot where you fight Leia, but it's for your Legend fan. She's using her yellow lightsaber.
I think it's Cloud City.
No.
No.
Wait, is it Cloud City?
It's the one where it's the same place where Han Solo got put in the Firebringer chamber.
Yep. That's Bespin then. Sorry, I haven't really played that DLC. I've seen videos of some parts of it, but not the whole thing.
They're literally like the dark side ending is just you become Darth Vader's fucking assassin. You kill everyone.
So, which ending of Force Unleashed 2 goes down which path, then?
Force Unleashed 2 doesn't go down any path. Force Unleashed 2 ends its own path.
By the way the Force Unleashed timeline is supposed to go, that the line that goes straight down, that's supposed to be the Force Unleashed light side ending. Because the dark side ending is supposed to cut off and go on its own path because the founding of the rebels is destroyed again. It goes on its own deal.
The problem with it is that, and this is just the thing with Force Unleashed, and we need to be honest about with this sad reality, none of it at all is in the timeline. It's the sad truth because we see how the Rebel Alliance formed with Rebels. We see Darth Vader's apprentices were the Inquisitors, not Starkiller. Starkiller was the name of the plans. The whole thing about like Starkiller was just a power fantasy, right?
Yeah.
It's part of Legends now, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a Legends timeline, yes.
It's part of Legends, the same how the Star Wars Zombies is part of Legends, the one that ends with Chewbacca being on Earth.
Yeah, that's
becoming Bigfoot.
That's basically Infinities. Because the Force Unleashed never really got expanded on beyond Force Unleashed 2 because of the Disney acquisition. There's no easy way to tie it in anyway. It's basically incomplete. It's an incomplete
into Infinities.
Never finished.
Okay. So essentially what I'm hearing is when you mismatch the endings from the two KOTOR games, you kind of get some weird incomplete piece of crap that nobody knows what to do with.
Exactly.
Pretty much because of the Disney acquisition. Like I said,
Venn diagram, they would be in their own circle.
Yes. Like I said, there was plans about being a Force Unleashed 3, but because of the Disney acquisition, we lost that game. We lost Star Wars Battlefront 3, the original plan, Star Wars 1313, and a Darth Maul game, and all of that. That's why the Force Unleashed timeline is so chunked, because they were in development for Force Unleashed 3, and because Disney bought the company, they wanted to throw out the EU, so they canceled everything and started from scratch.
Okay. Well, since we've covered Force Unleashed, then there leaves us one last path, and this is my favorite path personally. We're going down the light side ending of KOTOR 1 and the light side ending of KOTOR 2, which leads us to the Rule of Two. It leads us to Darth Nihilus and defeat of Darth Nihilus through the original trilogy. However, our first thing is whatever the heck this is, because I can't read it.
If I'm not mistaken, that is the original Star Wars Clone Wars micro series.
So the 2003.
Wait. Oh, yo. Where is this on this list? I'm trying to find that.
Oh yeah, that is.
Because
okay, so that's Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the 2003 micro series, not the 2008.
Yes, a bunch of tie-in advertisements, basically, just a couple minutes long. That was supposed to tell kind of a little bit of a story between Attack of the Clones, leading up to the release of Revenge of the Sith, done by Genndy Tartakovsky. Peak Star Wars power trip.
It really is.
General Grievous at his best.
Yes, this is the one where we get that infamous scene on Hypori where Vader bodies like 6 Jedi. That everyone's like, well, why can't he do this in canon? And
And it's because of the very specific instructions of Dooku to only go on the offensive when he has the element of surprise.
And
also,
unfortunately,
let's be real. The only time we ever see Grievous get absolutely bodied is by one Jedi in particular, and that is literally like Space Jesus.
Yes, the master of defense himself.
Yes. So another thing on the Grievous thing, really quick for all you guys. Right before someone says he got nerfed, yes, it seems like he got nerfed, but when the canon, aka Star Wars, the Clone Wars instead of Star Wars Clone Wars, the Clone Wars, the 2008 animation series, he went up against a lot of canon mainline characters, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and the like. So they couldn't exactly have him go powerhouse, because if he did, we likely would have lost a few main characters that needed to survive through the thing to be able to story going.
That's actually a really good point. There's a really good podcast. Here I am advertising another podcast on our podcast. There's another podcast out there called I forgot the name of it. I'll message it to Gravestone later, and he can put it in the description. It's absolutely phenomenal. But they talked about man, I lost my train of thought there. Help me out here. What were you saying there, Jester? That reminded me of that.
The perception of Grievous getting nerfed between the original 2003 Clone Wars animated series and the 2000.
A big thing about Grievous's nerf is because of how the Clone Wars was made. If you look at the TV show, they didn't know what they were doing, and they really don't. How many villains do you really have at the beginning of the Clone Wars? Season 1, the Clone Wars. How many villains did you have?
Not too many.
You had Grievous.
You had Dooku. You had Asajj Ventress.
So, how many times can we see those three bad guys get beaten?
A lot.
We can't, and that's just because it's a show. You need the good guys to win, the bad guys to lose. So if you notice, after like season 2 or 3, you don't see Grievous get beaten a lot. Most of the time when he comes in, he wins. Look at the Malevolence. He's just winning left and right.
Until until the main characters show up to destroy it.
Yeah, and even then, he gets away like it's still like a loss on Ahsoka that she ends up losing half her squad.
Mm-hmm.
Had to be a giant lesson for her. It's once they started making the throwaway villains that can lose and can be destroyed, that don't have to escape.
Yeah.
So I really don't think Grievous got nerfed. I think it's just because of the story he had to lose. But if we look like that scene where he was he attacked the Venator, remember where he's just bodying those clones, just walking through them?
Oh yeah.
Are we really gonna say that doesn't strike Tarkovsky vibes?
No, I'm not gonna say that, but I can say that they probably should. I mean, I get that the 08 series is supposed to follow Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka through their part of the war and everything, but couldn't we have at least gotten like a little mini arc where we just split off and like followed Grievous or something? Or seen like the other side? Because the 08 series is heavily biased towards the viewpoint of the Jedi part of the war. Couldn't we have like we kind of got it a little bit with the Reiko Hardin arc, but we didn't really get like, ho, I am Grievous, I am the Jedi Slayer, and this is why I'm feared. No, we just got more Grievous having to run away because otherwise he'd either run into Anakin and it would invalidate a single line in Revenge of the Sith. If you notice,
Come on, man. You know that they're jumping through those hoops.
Yes. Like he's in this, Grievous is in this room bodying everyone. Anakin's about to enter the room. Grievous is instantly like, oh, I gotta leave this room. Clunk, 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 clunk. Off he goes.
It's amazing. Come on, man.
It is kind of funny.
It's phenomenal.
Like the only time I think they ever met in the show they never directly interfaced, and it was Anakin chasing Grievous and trying to shoot him down in a dogfight.
Yeah, no, they did have encounters, but it was just their flagships, and fleet battles.
They never dueled. It was from a far back position, like I said, dogfights and capital ships.
But that did allow us to kind of get the Obi-Wan Grievous rivalry going on, which they I guess they accidentally made finish beautifully in Revenge of the Sith.
Are you referring to the fact that Obi-Wan's famous line "Hello there" was originally done by Grievous?
No, I'm talking about how Obi-Wan and Grievous had so many fights that they became rivals almost. And we got the amazing climax, the climactic ending of Obi-Wan finally killing Grievous in Revenge of the Sith. It's like we get to see the end of this rivalry, but they were able to build it up because Anakin had to take a back seat.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because honestly, I think they would have if Anakin could have fought Grievous, they would have had that rivalry building. Because Obi-Wan already has a rival, Darth Maul.
Yeah.
Hell, even Asajj Ventress isn't even Anakin's rival in the Clone Wars.
Ultimately, there's a lot that we could talk about General Grievous, and we could put this in. We could do that for a whole episode, probably, right?
Yeah,
we need to have an episode about villains.
Yeah, we could do a Grievous episode.
I don't think there's enough about Grievous to do a full episode, but maybe we can do a villains episode. I think that'd be really cool.
Trust me, buddy. We can go in depth on Grievous. There's plenty if you dig far enough.
And even if there isn't enough for a full episode, we can do mini episodes. It's fine.
Well, there's cool stuff about Grievous that kind of ties into Mother Talzin, which ties in with Darth Maul.
Yeah, but we're kind of stagnating here a little bit. We got to get moving.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert for that episode. Darth Maul is Grievous who killed Talzin.
No spoilers. We will save it for the Grievous episode if we do it.
Yeah.
Don't take content from here and now. What we could save for later.
Yeah.
Nah, take it now.
Well, in the meantime, hey, let's hold off and let's move on. So next on the list is Something or Other, Operation Skyhook, and Star Wars Dark Forces, which all work together ultimately, are this timeline's way of the Rebel Alliance getting the Death Star plans from a Death Star or an Imperial defector, and the discovery of the Dark Trooper project that we see in The Mandalorian in canon. Through Kyle Katarn, I believe his name is, right?
I do believe it was Kyle Katarn, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in this path, there's a whole convoluted thing of the Rebel Alliance finding out about this super weapon from various Imperials and through various Rebel operatives, including Leia Organa. And then, ultimately, it comes to a head when Kyle Katarn goes out and steals the Death Star plans from the Empire. And that's about where we end off in Operation Skyhook, with the Tantive getting the plans from Kyle Katarn before he goes off to his next mission, which is where we pick up in Dark Forces with the Dark Trooper, Imperial Dark Trooper program, in which we see troopers and droids that are meant to be pretty hard to destroy ultimately. And then we go through the normal movie structure pretty much until we get to Shadows of the Empire, which is a crazy massive thing, which is, I believe, yes. So, looking it up, it's a book that I have actually read, hilariously, where we see Prince Zizor, who is head of the Coruscant underworld, and we see Darth Vader, and we see Luke Skywalker and Leia. And then this is how Leia gets the bounty hunter costume for episode 6. And a whole thing with the criminal underworld. That's a lot of fun to read, and anybody who hasn't should go out and find that book and read it, because it is an amazing story. But then we go on to Return of the Jedi, and then we're on to Star Wars X-Wing, which is a multi-part series that I love so much. So, does anybody else here know anything about X-Wing?
I've been wanting to read them. That's all I really know. I know bits and pieces of like what it's about.
I know the X-Wing games a little bit, just because I've brushed a little bit of lore. I do believe Eckhart Slatter had a video about the X-Wing games.
Yeah, so this is the series, not the games.
I gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
I only know a little bit about a very little tiny bit regarding it.
So correct me if I'm wrong. It's about Rogue Squadron, right? Like when Luke Skywalker was part of. Because I remember after A New Hope, Luke wasn't a like full Jedi. He was just piloting for the Rebel Alliance.
Yes, and he was actually part of Red Squad.
Oh, I thought he was part of Rogue Squadron.
No, Rogue Squadron was created just after Return of the Jedi and the Rise of the New Republic. Rogue Squadron was kind of the big fancy favorite squad that destroyed the second Death Star, ultimately. So the two people that went into the Death Star along with the Millennium Falcon, we had a B-Wing, and we had an A-Wing, and we had an X-Wing. So that X-Wing was Wedge Antilles.
Chad.
Captain Wedge Antilles of Rogue Squadron. Now, Rogue Squadron became the poster of the New Republic for a little while, until they started noticing this big, massive thing off because, and a whole plot and everything. And it's like a 14-part series, but how it goes is Rogue Squadron notices that there is an issue. This massive fleet attacks Thyfera, the place where most Bacta is grown. And that is a big issue for the New Republic, but they can't do anything about it because they are so tied up in legal proceeds. Well, the members of Rogue Squadron decide that they literally will go rogue, and they do. And what ends up happening is, from that, is in the media portrays it as Rogue Squadron leaves because their X-Wings are not quite up to standard, and that leads to the New Republic trashing all of its T-70 T-65 X-Wings and upgrading to the T-70 X-Wing, but that means that Rogue Squadron gets all of their T-65 X-Wings back to go forwards with their massive mission. And it ends up being a whole thing where they go out and fight both Warlord Zinj and his Super Star Destroyer, and her name's Izard. I don't remember her first name, but she steals one of their members. His name is Corran Horn, and traps him aboard a Super Star Destroyer that we find out is actually underneath the surface of Coruscant. And after Corran Horn discovers that he actually is a Jedi, finds a lightsaber, escapes from the massive ship, and gets off and helps Rogue Squadron finish off Warlord Zinj. And that whole thing. Then they go back, they rejoin the New Republic after the massive Super Star Destroyer rises from the surface of Coruscant, destroying about multiple square miles of people and property, and goes off on a rampage where it takes over Thyfera yet again. From there, Rogue Squadron goes back to Coruscant to rejoin the New Republic, And they discover that a new Rogue Squadron was created to replace them as the poster of the New Republic. And they go in and they fly side by side, two squads together, the new Rogue Squadron going by the call signs Red for the short flight so that they don't get mixed up because they're all sharing comms while they're flying it. From there, Cornhorn and all of the actual Rogue Squadron, Corrin separates to go talk to Luke Skywalker for a little while about how he's a Jedi, apparently. And then a whole story breaks out from that, and the New Republic goes to fight Izard and her Super Star Destroyer, and it's a whole thing in the last and a big climactic battle over Thifera between the New Republic with Rogue Squadron, and ultimately Izard falls, leaving the New Republic with much less to worry about in the time. Okay, so anybody have questions?
I don't think so.
They sound pretty badass. I thought Luke Skywalker was part of Rogue Squadron this whole time.
Nope.
I knew about Wedge, but
No, if you in A New Hope, Luke uses the call sign Red 5, and that's what his X-wing comes to be known as.
okay.
It's Wedge that went off for Rogue Squadron. Luke was, I do believe I think him and Wedge was the last surviving members of Red Squadron, if I remember right. But yes. Wedge eventually went off and became Rogue Squadron, and I don't think they ever reformed Red Squadron. Luke was just it.
Yeah, there was no reformation of Red Squadron after Hoth. Wedge.
I thought Luke went and joined like just a normal squadron for a while and just flew as a pilot.
Nope. Well, after Hoth, they never reformed Red Squadron. Luke kind of split off and went and continued his Jedi training, and then the events of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi from there before Star Wars X-Wing series that I just talked about. And then we go on to the Star Wars Jedi Knight series, in which Luke goes through this whole Jedi revival kind of thing from during the events of X-Wing. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if I've read this one. Okay, so this specific book is part of Dark Forces, actually. Luke goes off with Kyle Katarn and goes and hunts the Dark Trooper program down before destroying it. And where we have the branch off here, I can't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure that this branch, Kyle Katarn and Luke both die at the hands of the Dark Trooper program, and the Empire rises. And the Empire comes back with Grand Admiral Thrawn and absolutely obliterates everything because Luke Skywalker isn't there. But if we continue down this way, then we have the Thrawn trilogy after this specific book. And the Thrawn trilogy is such a good series. Like, holy crap.
Thrawn is the goated villain.
Holy crap, does canon make Thrawn so bad. Like, Rebels, you kind of see his tactical genius, but it's so diminished compared to this entire trilogy. Like, this trilogy shows Thrawn at his greatest, and this is Thrawn's creation. Timothy Zahn is one of the best Legends writers out there, and he actually was employed by Disney to write a Thrawn trilogy for canon. So there are two Thrawn trilogies, and we're talking about the Legends trilogy that Grand Admiral Thrawn was originally from. So there are 3 books in the trilogy: Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command. I own all 3, and they are some of the most amazing books I have ever read. Do any of you 3 have any of you read them?
I have them on my bookshelf, but I've never taken the time to read it, unfortunately. I really want to get into them. I got them specific. I got them because I heard of how great they were. I just haven't had the time to sit down and read them.
I read the comic. Does that count?
Isn't the comic the canon one though?
Mm-hmm. It was the comic. Thrawn had himself a little Imperial officer chick by his side, a little side thing going on.
Okay, that already doesn't sound like Thrawn.
No, it's just when I say side thing, I mean Thrawn's equivalent. They don't ever do anything. Thrawn just uses her so he can advance.
Yeah. Well, the Thrawn trilogy is such a beautiful thing. And ultimately, it goes down the path of Thrawn has been hiding in the Outer Rim as a Grand Admiral of the Empire. Nobody knew anything about him. He wasn't in any of the documented files. He just kind of appears out of nowhere after the destruction of the Empire and absolutely demolishes the New Republic. He pushes from the Outer Rim all the way to Coruscant, which is the heart of the New Republic, and leaves Coruscant helpless. Completely helpless because they have no idea whether or not they can open the planetary shield without risking destroying asteroids, crashing into the surface. He also finds... What was that, Jester?
Yeah, the asteroid part, I did hear about that one. Didn't he mix in mass shadow generating landmines with the asteroids in there?
No.
So that way ships would if they try to jump in, they would smash into the asteroids, but if they lowered the shields, the asteroids would start falling on the planet or something like that?
Yeah, no, that's not actually the case. So what they did was he jumped in, absolutely destroyed the Coruscant defenses, and then he had 22 asteroids that he fired. He destroyed one of them as an example, so there were 21 left, but he had his Imperial Star Destroyers fake fire, so ultimately the New Republic thought that there were over 300 or so asteroids surrounding the planet, and they had no idea where they were because the actual asteroids were cloaked. They could not be seen in the slightest. And the only reason they found out that there were no asteroids left after the 21st was because of a smuggler by the name of Talon Card, who was coming to give them information on the location of Luke Skywalker and the Imperial base of Wayland, which had cloning cylinders that Thrawn was using to fill his new massive fleet called the Katana Fleet of over 200 ships that were absolutely massive dreadnoughts. And they came back, and it's an amazing story that ultimately, and they have the clone of an ancient Jedi master who was aboard the Outbound flight. And anybody who knows what the Outbound flight is, I really respect you because that's an old one. But this is where we get the name Mara Jade from. And Mara Jade was the Emperor's hand.
She's also gold.
A secret assassin employed by the Emperor that was force sensitive and had a lightsaber of her own that was beautiful pink, I remember. And she was actually at Jabba's palace, and the only reason she didn't kill Luke Skywalker over the Sarlacc pit is because Jabba told her to stay at the palace while they went out. And we find all of this out throughout the series. And actually, the opening scene of the first book is old Ben Kenobi appearing in Luke Skywalker's dream and telling him that he cannot guide him anymore. And then that Luke is not the last of the old Jedi, but the first of the new, which is after this series. Then we get to the Jedi Academy series, or we could go to Star Wars Epilogue, which is the branch-off path with where Kylo Katarn reappears somehow, and we meet Dr. Aphra, and there's this whole thing, and the New Republic is destroyed by the Empire. And that's about where that goes. Okay, so any questions on the Thrawn trilogy, or do I need to go on a full in-depth rant about that too?
Let me get this straight.
I mean, if we want to do a Thrawn trilogy segment, there's enough there that we could probably do our own videos on them as well, and just have like an in-depth breakdown of the story.
Yeah, we could do a whole thing. I could do a whole episode by myself on the entire Thrawn trilogy.
Wasn't it Mara Jade that ended up with Luke?
Yeah, we'll talk about that later as we continue.
Okay.
I was about to say, so you're telling me that old Ben goes to Luke and says, "Hey, man, Mama Thickums is on her way. I can't guide you no more, man. You're on your own. Good luck."
And then the rest of the events play out pretty much with a new Jedi Master who destroys everything and creates a clone of Luke. And then at the end of the series, Luke gives Mara Jade his old lightsaber that he lost with his hand at Bespin and recovered from his own clone after Mara killed him. It's a lot of fun.
Did someone say that Star Wars is a Mexican soap opera?
Space opera.
No, it's just a soap opera.
Well, next on the list ends up being, I can't quite read the next thing. It might be I know it's not the Hand of Thrawn duology because that comes after the New Jedi Order. I have no clue what this gray bar here is and the blue timeline off of it, but it's something else, and I just have no clue what it is. But it leads to the New Jedi Order, which is another series that I know a whole lot about. How about anybody else? Does anybody else know about the New Jedi Order?
I did not.
You're our group's canon, our Legends expert.
Dang. Well, okay. So the New Jedi Order is essentially follows the storyline of the children of Leia Organa Solo and Han Solo, Jason and Jaina Solo, who were born during the Thrawn trilogy. We also find out that they had a third child named Anakin Solo, but he does not appear in this. The New Jedi Order is a bunch of exploits that these children and the rest of their class gets up to. They are the first class of Luke Skywalker's New Jedi Order. And they go through all these exploits and all these things, and it's just a massive, really fun collection of stories that really have one overarching theme, and that is that the children of Han Solo are kind of crazy. Now, that's about all you get out of it, other than knowing that there is a New Jedi Order. From that, there's the next thing on the list that is also something about the New Jedi Order, and I'm really drawing a blank on what it is, because I've read a little bit of it, but I don't remember it. It could honestly be the Hand of Thrawn duology, but that really doesn't matter as much and doesn't have too much effect on the timeline, unless they're saying that this alternate timeline is a timeline where the clone of Thrawn, which Mara Jade Skywalker and Luke Skywalker discover in the Outer Rim, unless the clone of Thrawn survives and leads to this book, Star Wars Legacy, that I don't know anything about, actually.
Or it could be the Yuzon Vong.
I'm not sure. I don't know a lot about the Vong books, to be honest. Like, I know about them, but I'm not seeing anything that goes on here with
Oh,
them.
that's what it is. I found it. Okay. Looking up Star Wars Legacy. So this pot where the green timeline splits off, this is actually one of the coolest storylines that I personally prefer. And in my personal headcanon, green and white are the only two true paths of Star Wars. And it's because of this book. So this story is the story of Jason Solo after the New Jedi Order. It's been a couple of years, and he goes off with Cade Skywalker, and who is one of two sons.
Yo. Are we talking about the same Cade Skywalker? Double barrel shotgun bounty hunter Cade?
Yep, there are two sons. Mara Jade and Luke Skywalker have two sons, Cade Skywalker and Ben Skywalker. Cade Skywalker goes off does his own thing and everything, and Ben goes on to be a Jedi like his father. But this allows for Cade Skywalker. He is not a Jedi and goes off as a bounty hunter. And with this story is Jason and Cade teaming up, and ultimately Jason going down two different paths. Jason either becomes Darth Krayt, or he continues being Jason Solo. Star Wars Legacy, which can also be called the Dark Force, which also includes the Dark Horse comics, is the path of light side Jason Solo, and leads ultimately to Jason's daughter, Alana Solo, becoming the Dark Lord of the Sith, and Cade Skywalker killing Ben Skywalker as a Sith himself. Now, alternatively, this book is Jason from here. Jason seeing the future and becoming Darth Krayt, getting killed by Ben and Luke Skywalker in the next series, before the next series, Outcast. And that is one of the coolest things. Jason gives up his own status as a Jedi and a good guy because his daughter is at risk of becoming a Sith.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what should have happened is Qui-Gon should have just left him on Tatooine. And
Yeah.
Pretty much.
like, I thought we were following good guys. No, there is no good ending.
Yeah. So, but Star Wars Legacy, in which we have the light side Jason Solo, this includes the Dark Horse comics, which are pretty cool. We see this whole new Sith Empire, Roan Fel, who takes over the Imperial Remnant. We see Alana Solo taking control of the Sith Empire afterwards. Roan Fel is a Jedi with Luke Skywalker. It's a whole really cool thing that I don't know much about, but it is just one of those things that you need to know a little bit about, but it's so cool. It's so cool, in my opinion. But alternatively, we go down the route of Darth Krayt and Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa killing Jason Solo. And that's pretty sad. But from that, we reach the Outcast series, where Luke Skywalker sends a mission led by Anakin Solo to hunt down a group of Sith that appeared randomly, and they end up fighting on this weird space station in the middle of nowhere. Well, by way of what ultimately happens is all the Jedi team gets killed, the Sith survive, and the station is destroyed. And because the Jedi team is killed, Luke Skywalker is exiled from the Jedi Order. Ben Skywalker chooses to join him. and they go off on this little thing trying to figure out what that station did. Because the station kind of just appeared. It was hidden. So in Solo, we see the Maw, that massive black hole. Well, that station was kind of hidden in that region around Kessel, near the Maw. And there's no clue what the station did, but after its destruction, the Maw closes. There's no more massive gravity well within this crazy the crazy thing around Kessel. And from that, the area around Kessel starts to clear, and we no longer have these massive clouds of debris and everything. And what is discovered is that there is a planet hidden within the Kessel area, and the Sith were trying to find this planet. Well, the Sith find the planet and rescue the only remaining person there, who introduces herself as the Mother. And for any Star Wars nerds who paid attention to the 2008 Clone Wars show, you may recognize that sounds very similar to the Mortis theme arc, with the father, the son, and the daughter.
Oh, I know where we're going. I know where we've been going, but I've been keeping my mouth shut because this is straight Lovecraftian horror.
Yes. And this whole series is the story of Aboleth, the most horrifying villain in the entirety of Star Wars. And this is where I think we're going to, in canon, with the spoilers for the Ahsoka series. Well, Peridia, you know how at the end of the Ahsoka series, on Peridia, there's the massive statues of the father, the son, and the daughter, right? And how the daughter's head is destroyed, and it looks like there's scratches all over her statue?
Are you saying that the son is there?
No, the son, the daughter, and the father are all dead. I'm saying that the mother is on Peridia.
I thought that one of the kids. I thought the son came. I was remembering like I was going to think like that. I'm pretty glad to plot point, but it was.
No, in the Clone Wars series, the father kills the son after the son kills the daughter.
I thought the son killed the father.
Oh yes, the son accidentally kills the daughter and then purposefully kills the father and then is killed by Anakin. So the three of them, they're all dead. They're just dead.
Okay.
But
I guess I am remembering.
Yeah, but this lost tribe of the Sith, they retrieve the mother from the homeworld of the Ones, because that's where they are. And it's this crazy place, the font of power and the pool of knowledge, that the son and the daughter respectively drank and bathed in. The mother drank from the font of power and bathed in the pool of knowledge. And the son, the daughter, and the father banished her here and built the station to trap her here so that she would never be able to use the power and knowledge that she had gained.
So is she a bad guy?
Oh, yes. The font of power corrupted her in much the same way the sun got corrupted, but she also had the knowledge, the pool of knowledge that she bathed in, and was as knowledgeable and wise as the father and the daughter. And she's the biggest villain ever.
So if you want to be a good guy, you gotta be weak.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Clamp?
If you want to be a good guy, you gotta be both weak and dumb.
Well, no, because the daughter bathed in the pool of knowledge and didn't get corrupted. It's the font of power that corrupts.
Yeah. There's a reason I said that whenever he started bringing up the mother, aka Abeloth, I started saying about Lovecraftian horror. She's basically Star Wars' version, almost kind of like Cthulhu.
Yeah. She is terrifying and horrifying. So the entirety of the series goes through and with Luke Skywalker and all of these different Jedi and people trying to go through and figure out how to defeat Abeloth after that. And it culminates in a head with Abeloth searching for Alana Solo. Anybody recognize that name? Because I sure do. While she tries to rebuild her family in the son and the daughter, she convinces Jaina Solo and this random guy. She gets Ben Skywalker and this one lady to be the daughter and the son, but they will reverse roles because Ben is a Jedi and the other lady is a Sith. Let me look up her name. Such a good movie. Vestera Kai. So Vestera Kai would become the new daughter and would drink from the font of power, and Ben Skywalker would bathe in a pool of knowledge and become the son, bringing balance to the Force once again, and recreating the family for the mother. Well, what ends up happening is Vestera Kai and Ben Skywalker kill the physical avatar of the mother that is on Coruscant. Luke Skywalker goes to the homeworld of the Ones, kills the actual corporeal representation of the mother, and Mara Jade and Jacen Solo, Darth Krayt, team up to kill the spirit of the mother. And ultimately, Alana Solo is saved from the power of the dark side. Now, Star Wars Legacy does not end up with the destruction of this station, thankfully. So we only see the mother in the Outcast series. And she is the coolest character, one of the coolest characters in Star Wars, and the most crazy, terrifying villain that I've ever read about.
I'm not gonna lie, you actually got me one to read that book with Cade and Jason. That sounds like a really fun dichotomy with I just want to see how it comes out.
Yeah.
That sounds like really fucking cool. Cade is a badass. I used to have his toy as a kid.
Well, so that is our final of the final timeline. So these last two timelines, the white and green at the bottom center here, the white one is the light side ending, the green is the dark side ending, because ultimately they both boil down to Alana Solo. In this white timeline with the destruction of the mother, she becomes a Jedi of her own right, and the leader of the Galactic Alliance, which is a combination of the Imperial Remnant and the New Republic, after the Yuuzhan Vong War. And then the green one leads to the dark side Emperor Alana Solo. And they are both these two are my favorite two of the paths that Star Wars goes down, and my personal headcanon, as I have said.
I just want to say the Yuuzhan Vong are fucking badass. I was ordering pizza whenever you went over there in the timeline, so I don't know what you went over with them, but like
I didn't, because they're not they're technically between the New Jedi Order and this green thing that I can't remember the name of for the life of me.
Bloodlines.
I read like two of their books, and like they are fucking awesome. They're outside the Force, so like they don't use the Force.
Mind tricks don't work on them, but they still targeted the Jedi because the Jedi were
a religion.
Because the Jedi were able to defeat them best due to their lightsabers and throwing things and the Yuuzhan Vong around. And like it's just crazy. It's just crazy cool in general, man. It's
because like the whole thing about the Yuuzhan Vong is they believe, like their whole religion is that to die for their religion is good, and they want to spread their religion.
Yeah.
So they go out, they get people to renounce the Force, and if you don't renounce the Force, you die. But if you renounce the Force and follow their religion, you die.
Yeah.
And their ships are not ships.
The other thing
They're
about
asteroids.
them is the Star Wars galaxy is actually like many galaxies down the Yuzhong Vong warpath. And it has been theorized that Thrawn in canon and in Legends knew about the Yuzhong Vong, and what we're assuming their canon counterpart is the Grisk. And the entire purpose of the Yuzhong Vong is that they would take the entire galaxy and essentially consume it of all life. And they had their own planet. That is how they traveled around. And this planet was their leader and was a living organism. And they fed it most of the things, and quite often they would feed it entire planets.
Wait, so does this mean that the Yuzhong Vong, like, there's an actual possibility?
Yes.
Now hear me out.
Under the name
There's
of the
an
Grisk.
actual No, there's an actual possibility that the Yuzhong Vong might be the Tyranny.
Might be the what?
The Tyranny.
From what?
Warhammer.
Oh.
Why are you bringing Warhammer to Star Wars? It's not the same thing. We all
Are
know
you sure? Wait.
Space dinosaurs, while the Vong are humanoids. The most you could get if you want to try to tie the two are the Drakari or the Dark Elves. Either
But
way,
wait, we don't know because the Tyranny could evolve. The Earth and the Star Wars galaxies are two separate galaxies. The Tyranids could have evolved into the Yuzhong Vong, or the vice versa, or other way around. The Yuzhong Vong could have evolved into the Nids. I mean,
we're derailing the podcast again. We're doing straight Star Wars lore across the timeline, not a Warhammer Star Wars collab.
We can do this in a future episode. We've got a whole,
one day.
With this overview of Legends, there will be much more Legends-based podcasts to come. Trust me on that. And that's...
It feels like this is coming to an end, so I was throwing some humor there.
Yeah. But as we wrap up, know there will be more of these Legends-based podcasts coming out, and they will focus on specific sections. So maybe you guys want to, since I'm going to be stepping away from directing the podcasts, maybe you guys call me back for a much more in-depth talk on X-Wing or the Thrawn trilogy or something.
100%. And that actually leads into segues perfectly into a little announcement for the viewers. Along with the regular episodes of the podcast, we will be putting out little mini episodes. So that which would be perfect for, in-depth, small little, like, maybe 15-minute conversations about things like maybe the Thrawn trilogy, or we could have a full episode of the Thrawn trilogy. But, for any kind of topics, any kind of small things, and for the viewers, if y'all have any ideas or anything else y'all would like to hear us talk about, just feel free, go ahead and throw it down in the comment section. And we have a really special episode coming out next time with the holiday special, so please stay tuned for that one.
Yeah. Well, I am pleased to announce that Clamp is going to be taking over as head of podcasts, so in the future, you're mostly going to be hearing from him and not me.
Hello there. This is going to be very fun for everyone.
Much for me, anyways. Well, this has been our second episode of the second season of Green Theory. I am Corporal Gravestone, CT3610.
I am Clone Trooper Clam, CT1695.
I'm Corporal Blueberry, CT5936.
And I'm Staff Sergeant Jester, CT4977.
And I would like to wish everyone a very nice day.
Thank y'all for tuning in. Bye.